Amen. Didn't I tell you we were also going to get through most of Leviticus today? So much for that. I had no idea that we were going to go in the direction of Emunah when I put this together, when I looked at it last night, but I think that really worked out great. I think that's where we needed to go, and incorporating in the Matthew 6 verse, and I got to kind of put that, I'm going to have to work that over to right here, okay? So I'll know where to put it in my notes as I rewrite them. And so hopefully this is starting to really come together, that it's all about covenant. It's not about being a believer and being saved and being this and being that. It's about being covenanted. But not just covenanted, but wrapping that whole thing with Emunah. There's no point in being covenanted if you don't trust his side of it. Because if you don't trust his side of it, why would you do your side of it? See, that's kind of keeps going. It's like a circle. Well, I don't really trust him, so therefore why do I need to really do everything? But actually, if I really trust him, there's even more reason to really do everything. So you got to have to really understand that whole loop. And he always looks at you thinking, when are you just going to stop all this nonsense and let go and trust me? And by let go, I don't mean like don't do anything. I mean let go of the emotional part, the fear, the anxiety, the doubt. Because I think that society has almost purposely tried to ramp up as high as they can all of that. Just watch any news program and all they want to do is fear-monger you and then give you anxiety and give you all kinds of stuff to stress about. And so we have lost all ability to have shalom. Okay, so this is what we call the afterburn. So if you have comments or questions about the teaching that we did today, you can raise your hand, and Frederick will bring the microphone around. Okay, Amy's got her hand up quickly, so you can bring it to her. If you're on live stream, you can type in stuff to Robert, and he'll make note of it. Please bear in mind, especially on the live stream, that we might not be able to get to every question, and Robert may tell you that there's a teaching that covers, or I may tell you there's a teaching that covers your question. Don't take that as insulting and demand that you get your answer right now. Because even if you asked me, if you called me, I still might send you to the teaching. If there's a teaching that covers any question and you've not heard it yet, I'm going to send you to it, because a 1, 2, 3, 5, 10-hour teaching is going to answer the question much better than a 3-minute answer. And so, especially if you don't agree with my answer, you're going to have to go verse by verse to see it played out. And so be okay with that, hopefully. And please be respectful. We're only taking questions right now about this particular teaching today. If I hit on anything peripheral to it, we may say be patient and go look at the other teaching, or call us during the week. Actually, we may rather you call us when we get back from Sukkot. At this point, we're in full-on Sukkot preparation. But see, that's that human thing. I want to know and I want it now. Patience is not big human quality. So please be patient with Robert and Kurt as they try to handle what you guys are doing online. Okay, Amy, go ahead.
Okay, this is just really a comment, and hopefully I can say it as well as you did. One of the things I've been learning about and changing my character over the several months is Emunah. I shared that with you a while ago, and how the Father works through people, whether it's an actual person or what you read in a book or, what they did in a video or whatnot. But in applying what I've been learning, I have had to face a lot of my fears, a lot that came from childhood and things, that I was told that were wrong, that were lies, and then you just go from there and creating your personality or whatever. But when I faced those fears, I shared with you the other week, they were like a paper wall. When I did what the Father told me to do and really trusted him, even though I felt like I had just a little, bit of Emunah, it was like I went through that paper wall and I got a huge blessing by being released from a lot of fear and anxiety that I had grown up with, and got rid of a lot of lies that I grew up with about just the way my parents talked to me and treated me and everything, and really got the truth in my mind, and that changed me a lot. So I just want to encourage people to really listen to what Rabbi is saying, and don't be afraid to make the changes, because you'll actually really be blessed by it.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that. Good job. It's funny, even during services, I've just got a voicemail popped up on my screen. Do you think that maybe you guys can wait until even after the services? Robert's phone's going off too. I mean, if you're watching this live, this is not recorded. This is live. I mean, we are recording it, but we're still live right now, and people are still calling us, not having patience. Robert is sitting right here. He cannot answer your phone calls, okay? I mean, he's on the live stream. Thank you, Amy, for bringing that out. And look, the bottom line is, again, with the fear of Yahweh teaching, fear as an acronym is false evidence appearing real. That's like that paper wall. You know, most of the time, if you would just go forward, you'd realize that either the evidence is not real, or what you were afraid of doesn't happen, or wasn't really a reason to be afraid, etc. You know, there's a book that I believe Dale Carnegie put out. I think it's a Carnegie book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, or something like that. And in that book, it talks about how like 90-something% of what you worry about, statistically, that they've looked up, you know, it doesn't even end up happening. And then of the 5% that does, like 90% of that ends up not actually being bad. It was like a lot easier and less than people. I mean, it's such a very small percent of things that you worry about actually end up being what you were afraid of. And so we cause ourselves so much stress and cause so much problems and affect our health over something that has a very high likelihood of actually not being a problem. That's just statistical. Okay, and you know in your own life, if you look at it, that yes, sometimes you've worried and things have gone really bad, but how many times did you worry and it didn't? Okay? I counseled with somebody earlier this week that was very worried and it didn't end up being as bad. And that's just giving you more evidence. I'm not picking on them, I'm using that as a testimony for you. Many of the people I talk to are worried about something, then when they actually deal with it, it ends up being not as bad as they thought, or ends up being good even. You just don't know, but you're worried because fear kicks in. What if, what if, what if? Well, what if it goes good? How about that what if? What if it works? What if something you didn't even expect and it goes better than you thought? That happens a lot. And if you just pay attention and look for it, that's what Amy's sharing with you, you'll get all these blessings when it comes around. But it's got to start with you're not being afraid. And letting go of all that worry and anxiety. Okay, where's the mic? Okay.
I have it.
Christine?
So some people might already know the answer to my question, and maybe you've taught about this in another teaching somewhere. But I think I need a better understanding of what Emunah means. I only know it as faith, or... So
yeah, no,
you could. And
I don't have it in a teaching, although I mentioned it in 3 or 4 teachings. I mentioned it today. I mean, it's really a more full understanding of wrapping belief, faith, and trust all into one understanding. And it has to do with fully embracing that everything is under Yahweh's control, that he has everything in control, which means that everything that happens, he's either allowed it to happen because it will serve his purpose at some point, or he's caused it to happen because it will serve his purpose at some point. And so therefore, if we can trust and believe that, we can have peace and go forward in the process. I will do a teaching on it at some point, because when, like most things in languages, if you speak more than one language, you know what I'm talking about. Words don't translate easily or often as one-to-one. And so a lot of times in a language, when you use a word, and I say to you, well, what does that mean in English? It's got so much more flavor and nuances to it than just giving a one-word to one-word thing. Okay? Like saying belief. Well, what does belief really mean? Well, I don't know. I have to explain trust also and these other words. So there's a lot more to it in terms of the coloring and the flavoring of what a word and the depth of what it means. So Emunah has a lot more to it than just the idea that we might think from Christianese as belief. It has the idea of faith, trust, confidence, especially in the fact that Yahweh has it all under control. That doesn't mean you don't have choices to make. He may allow something to happen to you to help guide you to make the right choices and to cause you to come to the time. And you could be stubborn and not make them, and he can allow more things to happen to you. That we're going to read, by the way, as we get further in here. We're going to read the chapter where he says, and if you still refuse to listen, I will curse you 7 more times. So he allowed them the free will, but he's still kind of pushing and guiding them to make the right choices. So we should trust that he allows and causes, because he wasn't just cursing them to curse them. I'm cursing you to wake you up so that you'll make the right choices. But if you still don't want to do that, well, that's okay. We can play this game and we'll curse you some more. And anytime you want to stop playing this game and get online where you need to go, all things will fix itself and turn around and everything will go well. All parents have said that to their children at some point. You punished me. Okay, fine. Stop, being rebellious and disobedient, and then you'll avoid all that and everything will go great. I have told my children at every vacation, and you can ask them, they'll tell you this. Before we go, so they know, if you will trust me and obey and follow my instructions on this vacation, you will have absolutely the best time you ever had. I tell them that before we go. Right? My wife is nodding. And they've learned the lesson that works. When they've listened, it's been great. When they haven't listened, it hasn't been so great. But that's preemptive. Yahweh does the same thing here. If you will just trust me, it'll go great. If you don't, well, then I'm going to have to allow things or cause things to happen to get your attention so that you make better choices. Because if I don't give you consequences, you won't change. See, a lot of you parents are wondering, why are my children blah, 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 blah? Because you've never given them consequences. Some of you are reaping that problem. Oh, well, I didn't want to do that to them, and they cried, and so I punished them for like a week, but I gave them off 5 hours later. You guys are all liars when you tell your kids that they're being punished and you then break your word. And so they now know you're a liar. Don't threaten something you're not going to do. It shouldn't be a threat. It should be a consequence based on relationship. I'm telling you, if you do this, you're going to be punished for a week. My children will tell you, when I've done that, they were punished for a week. They you know what? They also knew that enough. They didn't even ask me not to keep the whole week. They never even thought to ask me. They knew I meant what I said. Some of you, your kids are bothering you 10 minutes later going, Mom, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 thinking you're going to give in, and then you do, and you wreck the whole deal. Why do you even say it if you're not going to do it? Yahweh only means what he says. He always means what he says. He's going to do what he says. You got to trust that. That's the Emunah thing. Can you trust that? Can you believe that? And we're going to get to that here in a little bit when we talk about, in the verses that talk about, well, if you're not going to keep the covenant, I'm going to have to curse you. And if you're still going to keep breaking it, I'm going to have to curse you. Why? Because I want you to keep it. Not because I want to curse you. As a matter of fact, I'm telling you this in advance of you doing it so that hopefully you won't do this. He said, but I know you. And you're too dense, thick-headed, stubborn, rebellious, stiff-necked, whatever, and you're going to do all this dumb stuff because you think you're smarter than me. We're not smarter than him. Brad Scott loves to open up with that. Can we all agree that God's smarter than us? I can't argue with that statement. That's a great statement. But we act like we don't think and know that he's smarter than us. I'm just going to do it my way. Well, he's going to say, fine, let's see how that goes. Have at it. I'll talk to you later and ask you how that's going. Have you not? Look, I don't know about you, but I've come to the complete, absolute confidence that I'm not smart enough to figure all that stuff out and guide my own feet. Have you got there yet? You need to get there. Because as long as you think you're smarter than he is and you're going to do it your way, you're going to be suffering and suffering and suffering. Maybe not immediately, because what you do may work temporarily, short term in some small way. But it's not the right way to do it. Okay, I can take a broken part of my car and do something that will work for a few hours, but ultimately may make it worse or really blow up in my face if it's not the right way to fix it. Do we understand what we're talking about? There are things that you can do that are short-term fixes that will look like they're working. And so you'll all of a sudden think, well, it worked the last time, so that must be the right thing to do. Don't look at short-term results as a way to decide whether something is right or wrong. I trust that he said it to whether it's right or wrong. Can you get there? Can we get to where we just trust him? Simple enough. All right, where's the mic? Okay.
Hi. So back to the topic of people who are fear-riddled and that rubs off on us because, worry, all that stuff. What do you do when that's like your parents? And you have to, and the word says to, honor your father and mother, and then, but for me, I have a really hard time with that rubbing off on me every time I go to visit them. It's a really difficult and kind of tumultuous environment. Not always, but a lot of the time. And sometimes I feel like I just have to separate myself from them, honestly. And I want to honor them, but I don't always know how, because I don't agree with a lot of things that they're doing in their life. And I don't think that they're really putting Yah first in their life at all. And it rubs off on me bad. Like, I don't feel I was led very well. And that's hard to admit, and I know they're not watching this right now, so I'm not blasting them. Nobody here knows them, thank God. But I think that's a big issue for a lot of people, and not a lot of people would even ask that. And hopefully you have an answer for that, or a sermon, because...
There's no teaching on that at this point, but no, I do have an answer for that. It's very common. Unfortunately, it's a very common problem, and I appreciate you sharing that. Couple of things. Number one, we will be doing a teaching that will cover the fifth commandment so that we understand what it means and what it looks like to honor mother and father. Because a lot of you have a real struggle of understanding that, because mother and father will often say that if you're not doing everything they say, you're not honoring them. And that's not what it means, okay? It's not an obedience thing. It's an honoring thing.
That's my issue.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's why I'm bringing that up, that I thought that might be a piece of it, okay? Because, parents are very good at trying to throw that guilt around, saying, well, you're not honoring your mother or your father because you're not doing what I say. Well, that's not what the verse is talking about. It's not talking about obedience, it's talking about honoring. And so if your parents are not doing things that they should be doing, you have to find a way that's not shaming them to not do what they're saying. To say, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Dad, I just don't agree with you on that. I understand that's what you believe. I don't have any disrespect for that. We all have to walk out our own journey, but please allow me to walk out mine. Be polite. Don't judge. Don't attack. There's ways that are honoring and dishonoring in how we talk to our parents. Okay? So you can say no in a respectful manner. You can say things like I've said to my mother, I said, look, if you're going to have family get-togethers and little reunion type things on Saturdays, the few times a year that I'm in New York, then I'm not coming. But I've said it politely and gently, instead of going, well, if you're going to be, well, I've said, hey, Mom, look, I got to keep my Sabbath. You know that. My parents are Jewish. You would think this would be easier. Okay? But if you want to meet with the family and go out to the pool or out to the park and do all these things on Saturday, I said, I'm not doing that. I said, so either do it on a different day or just, I'm not mad or anything, and don't be mad at me. And you could say it respectfully, okay? But I can't do that. And so there's ways to say no, essentially, to whatever it is they're wanting you to do with not breaking the fifth commandment. Now, the other part of it is that if you are in an environment that is fearful, stressful, chaotic, and all these other things or whatever, or placing pressure on you to try to do things that you don't really think you should be doing, then you probably need to spend limited amounts of time in that environment. But they're still your parents. You want to spend time with them. But you want to go there with envisioning yourself like Neo in The Matrix. Whatever they throw at you, you can just emotionally not let it hit you. Like the bullets at the end of the movie, right? Just let them throw it at you, but have that preparedness and that shalom as an armor and that peace on you that, hey, they're going to throw it, but you don't have to receive it. And you can just be calm and just know that's who they are. You know that's what they're going to do. And just limit your time. But also at some point have a conversation with them and says, look, I'd love to come here. You're my parents. I want to spend time with you. But if this is what's going to happen when I come, I find that really hard. I'm not going to put myself in that. Okay? And say to them, but I want to come, but can we work on this so this isn't what happens every time I'm here? There's no reason why as an adult that you can't talk to them as adults, and say, this is a relationship. And in a relationship, we have to both have needs and desires in that relationship. And I really need you not to treat me like that when I come here every time. And so I don't have to come if that's going to be the case. And there's some of you that have had to tell your parents that, saying, look, if this is going to keep happening, I'm not coming. And that's not dishonoring if you say it politely, okay? If you're not rude and obnoxious about it, because sometimes we get angry and we can come across really blasting. Don't do that, but just say, look, I want to come. I want to spend time with you. You're my parents. I mean, after all. However, if you're going to do these things every time I come, I don't want to argue with you every time I come over this or that piece or whatever it is, okay? We've had people in the group have to stop going to their parents or leaving their children with their parents because their parents will start throwing all this pork and Sunday and Christmas and other stuff at their children and not respect. I don't want my children doing those things, Grandma, Grandpa. So then you'll have new problems when you have children and Grandma and Grandpa want to come in and insert themselves, and it's hard to get Grandma to listen because grandmas don't listen. Okay? I don't know how they were before they were grandmas, but once they become grandmas, they don't listen. I'm grandma, I do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So you're all nodding your head, okay? Grandpa's not always the same, but grandmas forget it. They don't listen. So you have to draw hard lines and say, Mom, these are my kids, okay? You have to respect and listen to that. If you can't honor and respect that, then I can't leave them with you or bring them here. But that's your choice. I want to bring them here. Oh, you're breaking the commandment. You're such a Torah keeper and you're not. Why would you let someone who's not Torah observant tell you what the fifth commandment means?
True that.
I mean, seriously. Why are you letting your pork-eating, Christmas-keeping, non-Torah observant, Sunday-keeping person tell you what the fifth commandment means?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny now that you hear me say it, but you're doing it.
Yeah, you're right. I need to hear that.
Okay? Now, the other piece of information that you need is that you need to be in a group with a covering, a teacher, someone that you can call and get counsel when these kind of things come up. Okay, that's something that everybody needs to be a part of, is have some way to have somebody. Who do you call when you're having an issue with your friends, your family, your spouse, your parents, whoever it is, to get counsel from? You need that, which is why right, Dawn says I'm on speed dial. So that's, but it helps them. They do that's a family that uses it and it works, okay? So that's something you need as well, okay?
I'm from St. Pete, Florida. I'd love to find one there.
No, but you can still, I talk to people in Australia. They counsel with me on a regular enough basis, and they're in Australia, okay?
Nice.
Okay, so if they could do it from Australia, you could do it from St. Pete,
Yeah.
okay? I was married in St. Pete at the Don Cesar.
What?
Yeah.
Cool.
And there's no better place to get married than that giant pink building, you know?
That's so crazy.
What? Oh, it's like you can't miss it. It's like the biggest pink building I've ever seen.
Wow.
Anyway, on St. Pete Beach, yeah, the Don Cesar. But anyway, cool. So you can still call from St. Pete.
Yeah.
If you choose to be a part of this community, and if you choose to interact on a regular basis. We got a lot of people right now watching live stream that are just as much a part of the congregation as the people sitting in this room. As a matter of fact, we got people sitting in this room that started off on the live stream, and they consider themselves, and we consider them just as much a part of the congregation then as now. Yeah, I got these people right up here and people back. I mean, half the congregation. And so St. Pete is actually pretty close compared to where they came from California, they came from up in New York. We got people coming from all over the place, and yet, St. Pete's not that far. Okay? All right, so we can work that out, and I'll get to talk to you more after services, and we can see what we could do to work that out. Okay? So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
So earlier you were talking about having more than one covenant and how it can cause confusion. So I know this is more directed towards like a marriage covenant, because this is something I've seen that's caused issues in my walk. So one of the big things is like trying to know the level of the covenants, like your covenant with Yah, and then your covenant with your wife, and then the other people around you, like the people in this walk. And it's the people that are also in covenant with you are in the walk. And even parents, it's really important to know that tier. So, like, just giving advice and stuff, and a lot of times, like, I can see where parents or just people, you're trying to give advice to say a woman, say the wife. A lot of times you need to redirect. If someone's asking for advice, unless it's leadership, that they need to be redirected back to the husband, which they're in covenant with. So a lot of times they'll take advice and they need to let the wife go down the tier and need to be redirected, because it causes a lot of confusion in relationships when you're trying to give advice where the husband should be asked first. Amen.
Okay, so to address that, you need to go to the 2 teachings that Curtis is going to do at Sukkot. If you're on live stream, just watch them, because really the problem is called usurping authority. And you can't really understand about usurping authority if you don't understand the layers and the levels of authority, okay? I have a certain amount of authority as the leader of this particular group. However, if a woman comes to me and she's married, then we have to understand, again, so I don't usurp the husband's authority. And some of you have talked to me who have husbands, and I've tried to tell you, look, we have to make sure that I have to be careful what I'm saying to you does not interfere with that authority. And so, but then you say, but my husband's not covenanted and is not Torah observant, so then how does that work with my Father in heaven's authority? Okay, now we've got a real balancing act of how do we really make this all work? And that's what takes counsel. It's not an easy thing. Everybody's situation is unique, so don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all with marriages. Okay, just because you say, well, let's see, I'm a woman and I'm in covenant and my husband's not, so I can go talk to another woman who's in covenant and her husband's not. Their situation may not match yours at all, except for the fact that you have the same covenant relationship, but one husband may treat the wife very differently, one wife may treat the husband very differently. Everything has its unique levels and everything has its somewhat common levels, but the common levels are often not as much as the unique levels. So you got to be careful with that. And so that's why you got to seek counsel from the right people, because what happens is when you talk to your friends automatically just think one size fits all. Also, they will generally go through their own life. If this would work for me, it should work for everybody. Well, that doesn't work. Okay? Just because it worked for you doesn't mean it worked for everybody. And by the way, just because you think it worked for you doesn't mean it did. That's another part of the problem. You think it worked for you, but maybe it really didn't work. It just looked like it worked. All right? So we have to be very careful. Counseling is a very, very slippery slope. It's a tricky thing. It's got a lot of consequences. I would be very reluctant to give counsel, although a lot of you are very free in giving counsel. Please don't do that. Be very reluctant to give counsel, because after all, if they take your counsel, you are now complicit with anything that goes bad. Okay, you're now a co-conspirator, so to speak, or co-guilty or whatever. You are an accomplice if it goes wrong. So be careful when you give counsel. It's very, very much a burden, a responsibility issue. Okay? So I'm not telling you not to do it. I just would do it very cautiously and reluctantly, especially when you might end up usurping authority. Okay? And so that's a big, 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 big issue. So thank you, Caleb, for bringing it up, because yes, if a wife comes to me, I'm first going to make sure, what have you already talked to your husband about? What's the situation with him? Let's bring him in if that's appropriate, and talk to him, because I don't need him getting all mad that I'm counseling his wife, and then he's like, well, what are you telling her, and how come you're not telling me? There has to be a relationship there. Now, of course, if I already have a relationship with both and that we have an understanding of how that works, and that's also built into how I counsel, because there's now, the husband has an understanding of what we're doing. Okay? And so be very, very careful of that, especially. Good question, Caleb. And I wrote down here that I will try to talk about how covenants and how they tier and how one fits under the other, and what takes precedence over which in what order. And so, because, if you have more than one covenant and they're sort of layered, what do? I mean, you have certain responsibility, and it's not always covenants, it's relationships. And I mean, look, as a daughter of parents, right? You have parents, you have a relationship. It's not necessarily a covenant. You were born into this and you have a relationship. That relationship already has in it certain expectations. And how do you deal with those when the parents end up not being Torah observant and you are, to whatever degree, and so they're wanting to go in a direction? How do you deal with that relationship while you now need to not be disrespectful of the higher relationship? This happens with husbands and wives a lot too. Well, my husband wants me to go to this resort, to this golf thing on Saturday. Okay, And your Heavenly Father says that that's not appropriate on Shabbat. Now we have a thing that we need to work out. Okay, so now I need to know more about what's going on and to discuss how this all works and figure this thing through because of your unique situation that you're finding yourself in. Okay, a lot of people do not understand why or how or when counseling is so important. And you need to have that available. That's why Paul talks about finding those fivefold ministry guys. Okay, you need to find those shepherds that can counsel you. It's not really as much a teacher role, it's a shepherding role. Find a shepherd to counsel you and answer your questions and help you go through the minefields of life and how to deal with those things as they pop up. Amen? All right, good question. Okay, Nate.
First, I wanted to just say thank you for all your teachings. I just started a new role at work, and all the teachings kind of overlap into each other in one way or another. And dealing with learning about the covenant has really, if we're covenanted, brings a clearer message. Like the "Are you saved?" is a good teaching, but "Are you covenanted?" just brings that out more. And when I go into work, you were talking about anxiety and fears and all that. I've just started a new role in my profession. So rather than becoming anxious and there's a little bit of it there. I think a lot of that is, it gets that adrenaline going and all that. But when I go into work, I'll be like, but I don't know why I'm here. I pray that I know that you are in control, and whatever's in there, you either caused it to happen or allowed. But I had not had this understanding before, so now I'm giving myself a pep talk about you either caused it to happen or you allowed it to happen. And David was not raised up to who he was because he sat behind a desk somewhere or whatever he was doing. He went into battle and he fought, and his name became great, and Yahweh's name was glorified through all the trials and all the strength and all the stuff that he went through. So when I go into work, I'm trying to give myself that mentality. You're in charge here. I'm not. And I'm going to trust you to whatever whatever's going on. You're going to help me get through this, that your name might be glorified. And I'll tell you, I'll go into a real mess, and I have no idea how he does it. But at the end of the day, it's like, thank you, Abba. Thank you that you allowed me to overcome that fear and the anxiety, because this is an uncomfortable place for me. Maybe it'll be comfortable one time. And
Sure.
So it's through this counsel that Rabbi's talking about that I even seek counsel. My wife seeks counsel. I seek counsel. So I want to encourage the men that are here. For us men, it's like I got a shoulder. I'm a dude. I've gone through a lot. I don't need any counsel. I'm telling you. The fruit in our life and our family's life, between me and my wife, between me and my children, has been tremendously changed. It was good before, but it's that much more ripe and full. And it's getting fuller the more we go. Especially when my wife was talking last night, she said, "Oh, I love our family." And Donovan was standing right there, and she goes, "It's not just our family anymore. It's our family." And that's a big step for both of us, to have a family that we can trust, trusting him through counsel. So if you have family or you're married and you think you got it all figured out, just take a minute, especially men. Submit to the authority that he's an anointed, appointed. I can't explain it, but I know the fruit is there, and the blessing has been that much more. And maybe one day my kids will actually stand up and talk about it one day.
Amen. Look, let me just say this. That's a very good job, Christian. What the Taylor family is able to do that a lot of you don't, because you don't actually take full advantage of what's available, is that two things are happening. One is they have now gotten confidence over a couple of years that they could just pick up the phone. So that, a lot of times they probably don't, just knowing, well, it's just nice to know that that's available. The other thing is they're picking up the phone very early on at issues, so the issues don't become big. Whereas before, and a lot of you are only going to call counsel after the thing's already in meltdown, because you don't want to call, so you're only calling because you have nothing else to do, you're in full meltdown. But now they can call when something is early, and we're not at meltdown yet, and we can diffuse it before it really becomes bad, because they've now learned a process of a relationship. And you know what? we've all been in other places with pastors or whatever we've had in the past where we had whatever relationship or not with them. But to have the shepherding relationship that Scripture points out, most of us probably never had. And so a lot of it has to do with that word trust. After tasting of it, they've now come to the place where they can trust that I am there. And I've gotten calls after midnight. I've gotten calls at all kinds of times. Not because they're necessarily, having so many issues. Everybody could possibly do this kind of thing. But the thing is, I was there every time and took the calls. And they're learning that that's what I offer is real. And so, but like Nate said, I got more of the ladies calling and talking, and the guys are not understanding that part because the guys don't want to open up and admit they've got stress or problems or issues or things that they need to grow from, whatever else, and to deal with it. And also, some of you have heard me enough to know that you also know you're going to get straight talk and maybe a boot or some other thing that you might need, but it would be what you need. Okay? And that's not fun, and a lot of you guys just don't want to hear that from some little guy with a silver beard. I might throw my coin at you. I am a 5th degree with the coin, by the way. All right. So understand what he's saying. Be encouraged to give it a try. Look, you got nothing to lose, okay? And they'll tell you, I don't call them every other day asking how things are going. I'm available to them. I don't call them. I don't insert myself. I don't involve myself. And there are things that I've told them, look, that's something you're going to have to make your own decisions on because I'm not here to make all of your life decisions. That's part of what you'll see. We are very aware in the leadership of not being cultish. In other words, I'm not looking to insert myself in an inappropriate way into all the things your family is doing like the cults do. But I am available to offer wisdom and counsel. I mean, there are times when I wish I had that authority because there's some things I'd like to tell you, you need to stop that and knock it off and make sure people have to listen. But I'm not going there. You're walking out your journey. As long as your journey isn't overspilling into causing somebody else a problem, then I don't worry about it so much. If you want to cause yourself stress and problems because you don't want to listen, that's your thing, I can only put the words out there. But I can tell you that you should talk to the people that are testing it out and tasting of it and seeing the results they're getting. And it's not because I'm so smart or I'm so special or I'm so talented. It's because it's what he said. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's all it is.
Just to add to Amy and Nate's comments, I stepped out of my comfort zone following counsel, and I don't do corporate. I don't like corporate. Anyway, but I faced that fear, and I walked through it. And I found out that every time I did better and that I was expecting, just like you said, it doesn't usually half as bad as you think it's going to be. And then this week I faced a really big challenge, or at least in my mind it started to be. It always had been. And I just went, all the others haven't been that bad. I'm just going to not worry about this. And not that I didn't think it was still a possibility to get what I was not wanting to get, but it was way over what I had hoped. Wildest dreams.
Amen. And Sarah Beth could tell you sometimes when she calls me, my answer is, let it go. Just forget it, let it go. And so sometimes you just need somebody to keep telling you that's just let it go, I mean, different counsel for different situations, but you have to start to then trust that because we have our default way of doing things. It's like that programming, something happens, it triggers like a trigger point and it triggers stuff, and then you need someone to go to the record and say, stop, just let it go. Beverly?
Shabbat Shalom. I just wanted to encourage the young lady from St. Pete. For me, in my life.
Got to keep it right there.
Okay, for me in my life, I wanted to have the great relationship with my daughter as much as she wanted to have with me. So it could be a cultural thing, and when I say that, I mean where your parents came from, how they were raised. I was raised very authoritarian, and so that is who I am. It was who I was. And then the problems with me and my daughter, it touched my heart. It's like, there's something wrong. And so basically, I have one daughter that I think walks in Emunah, and the other two, that's another story. But anyway, she would allow me to, explode. And she would just sit there and listen. And then she would say, Mom, I understand what you're saying, but I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was thinking such and such and so and so. And I felt about this big. So I believe what Rabbi says is it's the way you present it. Sometimes you have to just, and then come back at it. But it's a love thing. Eventually, in my opinion, they will want to have the relationship they had with you when you were a child. Because after a point, you become an adult, and we don't know what to do with that. So
right. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's the other point. Looking at you, obviously you're not, long into adulthood. I mean, you're not like, hundreds of years old and all that stuff. But being young enough where your parents may not have completely accepted that there's a transition in relationship. You're still their daughter, but now you're not their child daughter, more an adult daughter. And that's a difference that, like she said, they don't know what to do with that. Okay? Right. Okay, so let me address that. So she said sometimes it gets complicated because they've got investments in it, like a car and other things, and it thinks it gives them certain control and authority. And so I had that problem with my father, where he would threaten to take the car away and then give it back and take it away. And I said to him, look, I am not playing the yo-yo game. Give me the car or don't give me the car, and I'll find a different way. But once you give it to me, I don't want to hear it anymore. Okay? But you can say that in a nice enough way. I wasn't very nice, but my father and I had that problem, and that was before I was, growing and transforming into the Yeshua's image. But boy, I got to a point where I was like, I appreciate the car, but I don't appreciate that I can't count on it, because every time you don't like something, you want to take it from me. So either give me the car because it's a gift and you love me and you want me to have a car, and not because you just want me to do everything you say, or don't. And so you can tell them that, but find a nice way to say, look, I really appreciate the car. I need one. I appreciate that. I can't afford one right now. But I want it to be because you want me to have a car, not because it has other strings attached to it. Okay? If it's going to have the other strings attached, I'll figure something else out. Keep your car. And be willing to say that. Okay, yeah. And so, yeah, you have to, be careful with that, because, yes, things usually come with strings, even if it's not openly said at the beginning. And you want to be careful with that to say, I just want to make sure that if there's going to be strings, I don't want it. Okay? That's right. Very good. Thank you, Beverly, for bringing that point, because that little piece out does help a little bit. Okay, where's the mic? Okay, Frank?
I guess I'll stand up. So I can touch kind of on both the subjects that have been talked a lot about. One being submitting to authority and being discipled, and the other one, in your case, setting up boundaries with your parents. So I came out of a very Christian, my parents were worship leaders and missionaries, but I never had, my father was very stoic and very passive, just his personality and who he is. And I grew up very aggressive and very outgoing. So he didn't know how to handle that. So I never had anyone in a leadership position that I submitted to because I was always faster or stronger or more I'm a red. I'm like Rabbi. I'm like 95% red and like smidgens of everything else. And most people I've met aren't like that. So until I got introduced to Rabbi Berkson and MTOI, a lot of it was just I wasn't accountable to anybody but me and mine. Whatever I wanted to do, I did, and I knew from my background, what I'm doing isn't biblical, but I don't care. Basically, I'll answer it when I die, and that was my mindset. And then just being marrying into the Taylor family, and then just submitting. It is hard. I'm 22. I'm a soldier, so you get this really alpha mentality. And then having to understand that I have no clue what I'm doing, and then submitting to that. And it's nice because Rabbi he's very black and white. He's very blunt, which I'm that way. I see a problem, I just go straight through it. I don't beat around the bush. So it's good that he does that. And his advice is really succinct and really clear. And there have been times where he goes, man, you kind of just got to deal with the consequences of your actions. And with my mom recently, I had to set up some pretty hard boundaries with her because she's more like me than anything. And one thing I told her was, I don't agree with what you believe, because she kind of went into like the really, really dark, like legalistic, like crazy side of the law, and just did a bunch of stuff that we don't have time to talk about. But anyhow, every time I talk to her, she tries to bring it up. And so I told her, I was like, look, Mom, you're my mother. We're about to have a grandbaby, so you have a right to know where we are in life, where I'm at geographically, how the baby's doing. You can come visit. But when it comes to your spirituality, I don't want to talk about it. And I don't want you to reach out to my wife and talk to her about it, because no one agrees with what you're doing. And what you're doing is you're seeking acceptance. And right now we need to kind of protect ourselves, because I'm new to Torah, so I don't have that, the roots to stand up and say it, and defend myself. So she's done a really good job. I think once I said that, she really understood, like, he's a man now.
He's starting to talk like a man.
You can, yeah, exactly. So you can you can tactfully put your foot down. I was very stern with my mom, and she's done a really good job of honoring that. And sometimes, like I was talking to her the other day, because, we're about to have a baby, and I was just telling her how I was doing. She tried to bring it up again, well, the Bible says this about that. And I said, Mom, if you don't stop talking about this, I'm going to hang up the phone. I love you, but I will end the conversation. If you want to keep talking about how we're going to get to Texas, how the baby's going to be, that's fine. But as soon as you bring up what you want to talk about spiritually, I'm done. And she just kind of took a second and was like, okay, Frankie, I understand. And then we had a really nice conversation.
Good.
So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Frank. And thank you all for laughing and catching that Tevye moment. In the words of Golda, Frank, you're a person. No, but seriously, but did you hear what he was saying about how he drew a hard line, but he was respectful, but he just made it clear, look, if you cross this line, you're not giving me a choice but to shut this thing down, because I really just don't want to go there. And so that we don't have an ugly problem, this is my preventative sort of measures. Now, the thing is that he has to do going forward is he has to be consistent. And as long as he's consistent, she will eventually stop, because that's what happens. When people realize that they'll push up against it just to test you. But once they realize it's just not, there's no arguing, there's no arguing, okay? Okay, and so the whole key is that just be consistent. Just say, Mom, you're going there. I told you I don't want to go there. If you continue, I am gonna hang up. And just as long as you're consistent with it, if you let them go on a little bit and then you're not consistent, they're gonna think, oh, well, I can push it and push it and push it. And so that's really gonna be a part of it. So thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate that very much. Okay, where's the mic? Okay, Lisa?
I just wanted to make a comment on Christine's comment. About I can't even say
Emunah.
Emunah. I thought it was really good how you brought out the difference between, putting your trust in Yahweh and then having the confidence. I guess I understand it as the confidence to act. So I just wanted to make that comment. It's something that I'd never really thought about too much before. The other comment I wanted to make was with the transition from where we were to where we're coming to, sometimes we get into the mindset of thinking if you're not in covenant, then you're nowhere. And before we left home, I had a good friend of mine come out of a really, really bad relationship. She knew she did the wrong thing and went into this relationship with this guy. She was trying to follow Yahweh to the best of her ability at that time. And she told me that she came out and I had to put her in a box. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to feel like I always have to box things up, but I felt it was a better box than where she was. And in my understanding, to me it feels like she's on the road to salvation. She may not be in covenant properly yet, but she's on that road. And I don't know whether you want to comment on that or correct what I'm thinking.
All right, so two things. One is, I hope everybody understands, this is why we do the afterburns, so that somebody can make a comment, I can answer a comment, and then a light bulb went on for Lisa based on what Christine had asked. That's, it gives me an opportunity to rephrase things or re-put things sometimes that really can do things, which is one of the reasons why I like doing the afterburns. And so I appreciate that you made a comment that something came up and clarified. Now, as far as dealing with your friends and family members, I want us to resist the need emotionally to feel like someone's heading in the right direction or making moves. That's more likely an illusion than anything else. They're not able to do these things till a light bulb gets turned on. So even though they may make a few choices that are better choices, until he actually disturbs their peace enough and wakes them up, they're not really making the kind of progress that they need. So that doesn't mean they're not making better choices, which he can be. But let's not, in Christianity, we had this mindset, well, I was never there, but I watched people, this mindset of, people coming along and getting, it's not that kind of a thing. It starts off with a light bulb going on. He has to open the eyes and the ears. And so you can help them maybe make some better choices and doing some better things. But as far as the total, understanding of covenanting and Torah observance, it starts with realizing that you need one and that you have to be open to everything he says and the whole thing of obedience. So it's a perspective of you'd like to see people starting to head in a direction. And that's all well and good. I've seen a lot of people seem like they're heading in a direction, but they didn't end up ever getting there because they had never really had their peace disturbed, and then the light bulbs go on and everything else. So it goes to that idea of like trying to figure out who's in and who's out. So be excited that she's out of the bad relationship and she's making some better decisions, but really avoid the thinking about whether that means she's actually coming in or not and this and that, because being outside the covenant doesn't mean that you're nowhere, okay? It means that you're not yet, most of them have not yet been given the choice. What you want to be worried about is you don't want to go back there. Those who are there and have always been there, they will probably be fine. Go listen to the Millennium and Kingdom teaching. Abba will open up their eyes at some point, if it's in the Millennium, and they'll get their opportunity, and most of them will make the right choice, okay? And so that's not the issue per se. But be glad that she's making better choices, she's out of that terrible relationship, and that you're being given a certain level of influence where she's listening to some things. But as far as until they're actually listening to teachings and open to the Torah as a whole and ready to change their life that way, which means that he has to have opened up all of that, I don't get overly, these little steps in what look like steps in the right direction are just steps that look like they're in the right direction. I don't want to read too much into them, okay? So just don't be reluctant to do that, because if you do that and it doesn't actually play out, you'll be disappointed, your heart will hurt, that kind of a thing. So you don't want to be going in that direction and then be all disappointed if it doesn't play out, Okay, well, if it's a cycle, then that's also another reason why you don't want to be on the same cycle. You don't want to be following her emotionally forward and back and forward and back. It's one of those 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. And then you get caught up in it because you get all excited, then you get disappointed, then you get excited, then you get frustrated. So you don't want to be caught up in all that. Just be encouraged that she's making better choices and pray, and hopefully that she'll keep going. And you'll just sit there and watch and cheer her on if that's appropriate, and keep her in prayer. But otherwise, try not to get too overly attached to what people are doing. Wheat and tares are still together. You just don't know who they are. Okay, so we have to be careful with that. Okay, where's the mic? Because we're getting late here. Okay, Robert, go ahead, live stream.
All right, I've got 2 that kind of run together, so I'm going to read them both to you. Georgia was asking, how do we respond to national covenants, as in Exodus 23:20 to 33? Are we supposed to do it? Will the curses fall on us if we don't? Christina asked, Exodus 23:25 to 26, national promise. In regarding to national promise, isn't that the same as Deuteronomy 28, blessings and curses, and Matthew 6? If we're grafted into Israel, doesn't it apply to us?
All right, so Matthew 6 is different, but let me first answer the first part of the question first, which is Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26, which we're going to get to eventually here, and what we're reading here in Exodus are all dealing with national things that you cannot necessarily stand on. It's not to say he won't give you some of that, just to show you he is who he is, but you don't know which pieces he might give you a little piece of, etc., from that point of view. Matthew 6 is more the thing to be dealing with, because Matthew 6 is not national. It just says it's covenantal. If you are covenanted, you should have every confidence not to worry about anything, because he'll take care of, generally speaking, what you need. But he's not saying that, look, you don't need a baby, so he doesn't guarantee that your womb won't be barren. You want one maybe, but see, under the national promises, there was a promise that there would not be any barren among you. And so needs will be met, wants might not be met. Some wants might be met just to show you that he loves you and he wants to, kind of encourage you, but we can't stand on it from that point of view. So Deuteronomy 28 is talking about the same thing I was mentioning here in Exodus 23, same thing is going on in Leviticus 26, that he says, as a cohesive nation in covenant, you can be assured that, your crops will grow, your animals will be fine, your physical relations will be fine, all these things, you'll be healthy, nobody's going to come and threaten you and come in as attack your, as like in war. You're not going to be harassed and physically attacked. You'll be safe. Those are cohesive national promises. Okay, Matthew 6 is talking to people individually and saying, look, why are you worried about stuff? Your Heavenly Father takes care of what you need. He doesn't mention any of the national promises there. He doesn't mention any of those other things. He simply says, you'll be, you can stand on that. That doesn't mean you won't be oppressed by another country, which Rome was there. It doesn't mean that you might not get killed or murdered or some of those things. He says, but you'll be taken care of with what your needs are. And ultimately, your needs are not in this life. Okay, your needs are preparing for another life. So if this life gets cut short by, a country coming in and oppressing you and crucifying you and everything else, you have something to look forward to. So you need not worry about that either, okay? You don't have to worry about, as Paul says, the one who could take your life, but worry about the second death, okay? And by worry, he means make your decisions knowing that that's what you're trying to avoid, not just, dying in this life. Hopefully that answered the question. What else you got?
From Cheryl, when a covenanted person makes a mistake and breaks a command, even though it may not be intentional, are they cut off?
No. Okay, remember, we have repentance. You have teshuvah, the idea of getting back on. Covenant, remember, the cutting off from people thing. Okay, hold on, let me rephrase this. Yes, you are cut off to some degree in your relationship with him until you fix it. No, we don't cut you out of the community just because you make a mistake unless you are actively causing a problem in the community. Okay? But yes, when you sin, you have now created a cutoff between you and the Father until you repent. I mean, that's always been simple and black and white and straightforward. When you sin, you cut yourself off from the Father. When you repent, you restore that relationship, and he tells you your sin is forgiven and it's kept as far as east is from west, et cetera, right? So we have that. But as far as a group dynamic, all of us are making mistakes all the time, but it's when they are causing the group a problem. If what you're doing is causing others to stumble, if you're causing rebellion in the ranks. In Proverbs, when we talk about in Proverbs 6, it talks about the 6 things Yahweh hates, the 7 is an abomination. What's the 7th? Okay, the one causing problems in the body, the one causing disruptions, dissension, a split in the body, okay? So let's understand that's the biggest problem. So as long as you, in what you're doing, is not creating any issue for the rest of the group, there's no putting you out of the camp, so to speak. We had a person, for example, at one point that decided that he wanted to marry somebody and decided not to wait until they got married, but to move in together. And we said that that's not going to work, especially because there was a daughter involved, with one of them was married, hadn't been married before, had a child. And we said, look, you've got 30 days to fix this. We'll give you time. We actually ended up giving them 60 days. They didn't fix it. We said, look, but we told you if you don't fix this, we're going to have to put you outside the camp because you're setting a bad example that's going to cause others to stumble as the children are watching what you're doing. Okay? And so that was a situation where we had to put somebody outside the camp. They don't come up often, but it has to do with this. If what you're doing is affecting others in the camp. If it's just affecting you because you're doing something stupid and foolish or whatever, and it's only hurting you, well, that's dumb on your part. You shouldn't do things that hurt you. We all do. So I'm not attacking you. But mostly what we do only hurts ourselves. And so those things we don't put you outside the camp about, even if I know about it, as long as it's not influencing or affecting or harming anybody in the camp. Does that make sense? Okay? So if that were happening, we would have to say, look, if you're going to keep doing this, we'll give you warning first and tell you if you're going to keep doing this, we're going to have to put it outside the camp. So you're going to have to stop. Now, that's your choice. Okay, we'd rather you just stopped and stayed in the camp. We're also going to tell the person how they can come back. If you can repent of this, make it right, and promise not to do it anymore, we can work our way back into the camp. We don't want to put you out and never have you come back. So we always give people the path back when they leave so they know how to come back. Most people never do come back because they get emotionally offended and everything because you put them out. Well, let them tell me what to do, blah, blah, blah. You know. Although the person that we did put out for that whole housing situation said, no, I understand. At least that's what he said to us as leadership when he said it. I don't know what he said after he left. But, you know, I said, look, we did tell you. We gave you an extra 30 days. Are you planning to fix this? No. Well, then we don't have a choice. You have to go. Okay? And that's only one of the very few times you've ever had to do that. But just understand that that's what it looks like today. Okay, what else you got? That's it? All right, let's go get the children. Looks like most of them are in here. I see all the Gadol kids are in here. Shabbat Shalom! All right, Shavua Tov. All right, have a good week. We'll see you guys on Yom Kippur. Thank you. Scratch in there.